The Phoney Burger Letter, Part 2. The so-called 1988 Burger Letter is a letter said to have been written by Chief Justice Warren E. Burger. The letter is said to have been written at the request of Phyllis Schlafly, founder of the Eagle Forum, a right-wing political group. The letter is the centerpiece of evidence used by opponents to an Article 5 convention. After careful research by FOAVC, questions of authenticity were raised in our first video about the so-called 1988 Burger Letter. These questions include the date the letter was actually written. The letter is dated June 22, 1983. Opponents insist the letter was written in 1988. The letter says Burger was retired in 1983. Burger retired from the Supreme Court in 1986. The letter describes Burger as chairman of a committee that did not exist until 1985. Convention opponents, such as Tom DeWeese, have stated the letter was written in 1983. DeWeese later said he made a, quote, typographical error, unquote, but his statement agrees with a 1996 webpage saying the letter was written in 1983. According to an internet source, Doug Kelly, a known John Birch Society operative, supplied the letter. The letter contains statements supposedly made by Burger inconsistent with knowledge a Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court would likely have. In the letter, Burger states there is no way to control the agenda of a convention. Given that Burger was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, it's unlikely he would be so ignorant of the Constitution that he would be unaware of the Article 5 ratification procedure, which is intended to fully control any convention amendment agenda. Burger perpetuates the myth that the 1787 convention acted on its own to create the Constitution. This myth, popular among right-wing groups, is easily disproved by public record. In its February 1787 convention call, Congress instructed the 1787 convention to render, quote, the Constitution adequate, unquote, to the needs of our nation. The Burger Letter, dated June 1983, mentions Article 5 application rescissions by the states. Public record shows there were no rescissions of any Article 5 applications by the states in 1983. Since its first video, FOAVC has continued research on the authenticity of the so-called 1988 Burger Letter. This research has turned up more questions than answers about the Burger Letter. The Burger Letter is mentioned on page 285 of Phyllis Schlafly's 2005 biography, Phyllis Schlafly and Grassroots Conservatism. However, the book's footnotes do not cite the 1988 letter. Instead, they cite two 1986 letters as being the, quote, one-page letter, unquote, written by Burger. No mention or reference is made to a 1988 letter written by Warren E. Burger. A representative of Phyllis Schlafly stated the author, who had full access to all of Mrs. Schlafly's files in order to write her bibliography, didn't know about the letter, despite the fact he describes the Burger Letter in his book. In sum, the authenticity of the so-called 1988 Burger Letter is dependent on typographical errors or on people who are said not to know what they are talking or writing about.
These 1986 letters are very significant. Because federal law requires correspondence by federal officials be archived, these letters are probably authentic. In 1986, Burger was the most powerful sitting judge in the country. Schlafly's 1986 letters attempt no less than to bias a sitting federal judge in order to further her political agenda. Schlafly has never been completely honest about the Burger letter. She has never released any of the letters she wrote to Burger, so the full story behind these letters is unknown. She has never discussed Burger's actual public record about an Article 5 convention, which presents a totally different view than the so-called 1988 Burger letter. That record refutes much of what is stated in the so-called 1988 Burger letter. Burger realized there was a difference between an Article 5 convention and a constitutional convention, and urged using Article 5 to solve constitutional issues. Burger said an Article 5 convention would not be a threat or remove rights currently enjoyed by all Americans. He stated his position favoring using Article 5 at least twice. Burger writes about meetings with Phyllis Schlafly. There is mention of Burger using, quote, proper channels, unquote, to further Schlafly's political agenda. Schlafly had meetings with Burger to discuss Article 5. She has refused to divulge the contents of those meetings. She's kept secret contents of letters she sent to Burger. She has never disclosed what, quote, proper channels, unquote, she asked Burger to use. Phyllis Schlafly has never come clean about the so-called Burger letters. Too many questions surround the so-called Burger letter for it to be accepted on face value. Whoever wrote the so-called 1988 letter misused Burger's earlier public statements and ignored the full truth about what Burger said. Most likely, the so-called 1988 Burger letter was created by Doug Kelly, a John Birch operative, for obvious political purposes. It must be ignored. As to what really transpired between Schlafly and Burger, we may never know.